I think I was just talking to Harshit last time how he was the one who recommended Emmanuel's Big Hoom to me, and then it's such a nice coincidence that he called me on his podcast when you are here. So I was really excited
Great.
I'd be getting to talk to Jerry sir. And only like 2-3 months back, I had also read The Education of Yuri, which I really liked. So
Great.
I was very excited that you'll be on the show and I could talk.
Hi, Jerry sir. Welcome to the Bohemian Project Podcast. Let's start with M and the Big Hoom. That is the first book of yours that I read, and like Monica said, I recommended it to her as well. And she turned out to be a bigger fan of yours than me. And when I first read the M and the Big Hoom, I was not aware that it is partially inspired by your own life. And I read about it and I researched about it afterwards. And thinking about that afterwards reminded me of this quote by Kurt Vonnegut. I believe it was in his Mother Night. There's a line in that book, like, you are what you pretend to be. So you must be careful what you pretend to be. And that's such a beautiful line. And the major theme, the major theme in that is how you perceive a memory is given the benefit of hindsight. And I could say something similar to falsification of memory in your book as well. Was that something you were trying to do intentionally?
Okay, two ways to answer that question, Harshit, which is an interesting and important question instead. Both in terms of telling stories and in terms of what memory is. So I was recently watching, I think it was a Netflix special on memory, and it suggests that memory is actually composed of proteins in the brain. And each time one visits a memory, the protein is reformulated, which means your body takes proteins, raw proteins from around wherever the synaptic fluid or whatever's present in the brain, and reconstitutes that memory, which means that each time we visit a memory, we actually are changing it. So falsification of memory on the cellular level is inevitable, right? That's one level of it. The second is the falsification of memory in the telling of the story. Now, part of this is how should one put it, is inevitable, because if I were to be telling the story of my interview with Harshit and with Monica, would I include what you were wearing? Would I include, whether you were drinking tea or coffee or not? Would I include where you were sitting? Or would I simply tell the bare bones of the story? So some element of editing in every storytelling is inevitable. And that element of editing is based really on the personality of the person who's doing the editing, because it must be what that person sees as important. So I think Rajkamal Jha visited the ruins of Gulbarga Society and came back with the picture of a child's notebook. And from that child's notebook wanted to rebuild the riot symbol. Now, other people may have visited the same thing and come back with other images which are starting points. Each of these is, in some ways, by excluding other things, a falsification of those other things. And on the third level, it is, Evan the Big Hoom was started as an account, a biographical account of my life as the son of a bipolar woman. And it eventually became a novel. Now, when it became a novel, and I say it is a novel, I'm telling you there is falsification of memory. I'm saying that I have worked on the raw material of my life, and I have converted this into what I consider the literary form called the novel. So some falsification, I have signaled, I have flagged that I am going to change things, that I am working from this material, but I'm changing it as well.
I think in your Unseen and the Unseen, that podcast that you did, you talked about this particular topic in detail, that it was your life's work that you put in NM the Big Hoom. Like you used to write journals and diaries. I'm not sure whether you are still into that practice or not, but you used to write that, and that eventually, that plethora of diaries eventually turned out to be M and the Big Hoom.
I think diary writing and journal writing still is an important part of my practice. It's a daily part of my practice. There are days when I take off, which is days when I don't do any active writing work, holidays literally. But even on those days, I will try to do the diary and the journal, because I believe those are like keeping your hand in, and they are a book or a record and an archive of what that person called Jerry Pinto constituted as his day, what he thought was important to record, what he thought was, it may not necessarily be what is important. Okay? So on the day when uh, uh, a political leader is assassinated, that may not make my diary at all. It may well be very important in the life of the nation, in the life of the world, but not in my emotional sphere. So the diary and the journal are your ticket to self-indulgence. You're allowed to say what you want. You're allowed to be front and center. You're allowed at all points to be recording from only one point of view. What is it that Jerry Pinto would want to know about himself 20 years from now? Which, of course, that Jerry Pinto is a mystery, an enigma. We don't know. I don't know what he would want to know. He might find all this terribly banal and terribly useless. But I'm allowing myself to believe that I can write these things from only that point of view. I'm not looking at an aesthetic. I'm not looking at a critical. I'm not looking at any other point of view other than my own. So it's very important freedom norms, because I think in general you're free. You're at your most free before you've been published. Before you've been published, no one knows who you are. No one knows what you are. No one knows who you can be. They don't know anything about it. And you are actually at that point in time pretending to be a writer. You're pretending to be someone. Now, as soon as the first piece of writing goes out into the public sphere, there's a certain limitation that is naturally put upon. So I started off as being a journalist, a certain kind of journalist. I thought the first maybe 2 or 3 years of my life, I only wrote what were called funny pieces. Middles, they were called in that time, because there was a structure to the newspaper, and the newspaper had an edit page and an op-edit page, and on the edit page, in the center of the edit page, there was a space for a lighter column, something that would not be quite have as much gravitas as all the material around it on the edit page. And I used to write for those. So I was called a funny writer. And I moved on to being a writer in the cultural sphere. And obviously, once when is the cultural sphere, a certain amount of one's politics also leaks out in one's perceptions and the way one sees the world. And from that, there again, there's a certain, whatever audience you have, however few people read those things, you're slowly being fitted into a certain straitjacket. Now you have to, then came the first book, which was Surviving Women, which was again supposed to be a kind of funny, not to be taken very seriously look at the war between the sexes.
As I recall, it was supposed to be an answer to some other book, I believe.
Shobha De's Surviving Men. So it was framed in a certain way. And so at each step of this way, your choices are being narrowed and are being limited. Now, my entire life, I have only fought for freedom. Okay. I fought for the freedom to write what I want, to be what I want, to get up in the morning and determine the course of my day. That means, of course, there's certain things that one pays for freedom. Freedom is never free. No one is your freedom, right? So you choose that you will not have a salary, for instance. And not having a salary means that you when you're on salary, you can take leave and sit at home and do nothing. When you're working for yourself, if you take leave, then you're not earning. And so you eventually, like, the clock starts ticking inside your head. The meter is not down. Am I earning any money today? How is this going to work? That starts ticking and again and again. So freedom isn't free, but it is very valuable to me to have intellectual freedom. So the choice to write, of what to write, and to get up in the morning and choose whether to write, to translate, to edit, to work on something, to write. Well, each of these is a freedom that I have nurtured very strongly, and it's my central principle. really.
Right. So I want to explore this theme of freedom and your association with that more in detail. But I want to go off topic a little bit. What you said about journaling, I see a similar kind of behavior in my generation, but now they have moved on from journaling to taking a photo every day. So that kind of thing. So I think that is our generation's way of coping with all what's happening around us and keeping a memory of ours intact. Like it happens with me, right? I also realize this ki I recall a certain event that has happened with my life, and I exactly recall where it happened and when it happened, not because of something exciting about that event, but I recall that okay, I was there and something else was happening.
Yeah, I think it's a very strange thing, right? Memory is extremely personal. So some people might actually remember what they ate on a certain day. A friend of mine has just written a book, a beautiful account of her brother's suicide. And what struck me throughout the book was how clear her memory was of what she was wearing on each moment, at each significant moment. And the clothes are very interesting, I have to say. Even when I was someone who's not terribly interested in clothes, I was interested in reading where those clothes came from, what they looked like, how they fitted into the small town in which she lived, etc., etc. It's very interesting. But I would never be able to remember what I was wearing on any given day. That's just not part of my way of remembering things. And so, Ashwin recently went to American College, Madurai, to give a talk. And they were very, I returned after many years, I think maybe 15 years, to Madurai. They done a very sweet what, video presentation of my last visit and said, this is so, and I was wearing the same kurta that day and on screen the same kurta. And it caused a little mutant chuckle to run through the audience. The man is still wearing the same clothes. But actually, after about 3 minutes, I forgot about it entirely. I didn't care. But I'm saying, I think many other people would not very comfortable with that. So, how one links uh, the details of one's life. Okay, we all pretty much live the same lives, right? We're born, we grow up, we get an education, we're lucky, we start reading, we enjoy some form of media, we fall in love, we fall out of love, we get hurt, we get married or not, etc., etc. It's not, but what really makes everything so fascinating in the world of literature is how out of that similar experience, we chose these moments and knit together a different pattern each time. So I often think of the novel as a quilt. It's like you're taking little bits of fabric from some are from memory, some are from imagination, some are borrowed, some are stolen. All these you put together. But what you really bring to the table is the connections between these, how you juxtapose, how you set these together, how you make a completely and incredibly new pattern out of something that wasn't there before. That's really fundamentally what we're all doing, and it is the answer to that old question that so many people have. That is, my life is not very exciting. What can I write about? Your life is not exciting because it's very ordinary and everyday to you, because you're living that life
Hmm.
every day. But it is probably fascinating to somebody who is not living that, who's not experiencing the same quotidian reality that you are experiencing. And we have to, I think, in the world of novel writing, and the world of poetry, of self-expression in general, we have to believe that we are interested in each other. And in this interest in each other, we are therefore learning something about ourselves as well. So when I read a novel written by another person, I'm thinking, oh, wow, is that the way it was? Okay. And is that how you reacted? Right? I wouldn't have reacted that way. But you're very interesting. I think literature, therefore, is an inclusive practice. And readers tend to be people who can make terms with other lives, right? So you read Lolita by Nabokov. and you may never be interested in seducing an underage woman. You may never be. You may find the character of the central character completely repugnant. You can still see the power of the writing. That's what literature is. Even the most horrifying things, suddenly they're not acceptable. But you can see how it is also part of what the Rentius said in the third century. Nihil humanum alien est. Nothing human is alien.
Mm.
It may be repugnant, it may not be comprehensible, but it is not alien.
A similar kind of example I give people along the same line is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Like it's all about, he makes you care for a pedophile. So essentially it's that, yeah. I was also about to ask you that doesn't it scare you that as a writer, you don't recall a lot of stuff out of your memories, but you essentially answer that somewhere in that key, just try to borrow and steal.
Amnesia is a constant terror. Amnesia is fear. I think there is when writers talk about the blank wall of the page, which is demanding you inscribe something on it. What they're not thinking about is the page. What they're thinking about is words failing, words not coming, words being reluctant or hesitant or not even being there. Right? So loss of memory, for instance, the reason why Alzheimer's disease, by dementia, all these become such poignant and stirring narratives is because when you lose memory, you lose humanity. Humanity is memory. The Greeks made Mnemosyne the chief muse. She was the muse who defined all art. Without memory, there can be no art. And so, therefore, that centrality and that reason why, for me, I encourage people to do as much writing as they can, to put down what they can of their lives, to talk to their parents and to put that down. Because the more we concretize this extremely fragile, ephemeral thing called memory, the more humanity we have secured. It's the future.
Right.
You were a journalist earlier, but you decided to write pen down M the Big Hoom, and you did it in such a I don't know, the writing felt very vulnerable and raw, and it takes courage to write something like that. What inspired? I think this is a repetitive question, but I just wanted to know what inspired you to write that. Like just have it down in the format of a book.
I think, many different ways to approach that. I think it would have been taken a lot more courage not to write the book, which means that I would have to live with all of that inside my head. And the attempt was to bring it outside the head, to confront it on the paper, to make it real in that sense. And of course, it fails. It doesn't work as well as you would expect. You don't have the kind of closure that you think, that you hope for, because that word itself, closure, right, is a myth. I don't think it's a particularly American myth that we ever find closure. We find all human emotion, all human feelings are sinusoidal. They wax, they wane. But self-expression does help that waxing and waning to become a little more handleable, within a more handleable band, so that your downs are not so terribly down and your ups are not so terribly magnified. You manage it better with self-expression, right? So that's the courage thing. As for the vulnerability part of the question, I think if you are not vulnerable on the page, you're actually posturing. Okay? You're posturing, and especially if you're a male, then you're doing a little bit of macho posture. And that is an inevitable, it's inevitable with our socialization. We are socialized through posturing because we are told it is defensive. Right? The reason why, for instance, boys are encouraged not to cry, or told boys don't cry, is because if you were to cry in the presence of a bully, that bully is going to beat you up with great delight and pleasure.
Right.
So parents are telling you, be strong so that you won't be revealed as weak. Now here comes the good thing that you talked about earlier, Harshit, which is What are you pretending to be? Are you pretending to be invulnerable? Then you will not never be invulnerable. But what will happen is that you will develop an emotional carapace around you, a kind of hard shell. And for someone who loves you, to penetrate that hard shell may be difficult. For you to penetrate that hard shell and get out may be difficult. And you may end up isolated, alone, and sad. And those are many men will say to you very, very clearly, it's worth it. I'd rather be isolated, alone, and sad on my own terms rather than be open and vulnerable and be hurt on someone else's terms. And I'm not judging them for that. I'm saying this is the way the world is, right? So we all go out into the world and we choose a position from which we approach the world, right? And which position is the better one? Always. We can only do what we can do with the best of our intentions.
Yeah. I think you brought it to full circle, this whole topic. You are what you pretend to be, so you must be careful what you pretend to be. And you talked a lot about vulnerability. I still struggle with that. I was talking with you and listening to all your other interviews and podcast episodes, and listening to you talk about it particularly in other literally platforms. I realized that you are very real. You are like, this is the real Jerry Pinto that we are talking to. And when I started this podcast, I wanted to portray myself as it is, but I'm still hesitant, like, to completely open up. There's a certain kind of restrictness that I feel inside. Okay, I see, this is how I am usually. Like, I sometimes argue with people unnecessarily over small things. So I want to I try to curtail that, because that is something that don't want to portray to the world out there. I also, whenever when a guest is speaking, like you, if I recall something out of my memory, I still feel hesitant to share that with everyone, because I don't know how that can be perceived. So that kind of hesitancy is still there with me, and I'm still not there to be completely vulnerable, and in that regard, yeah.
All works in progress, Harshit.
Yeah.
Nobody there is no one who is completely vulnerable, and there is no one who is completely self-contained, because this is completely self-contained person is in a state of fugue, is in a psychotic world of self-contained world. So
that's very well put.
Recognize what one is doing each time, and to say that, okay, mess that up, we'll try. That's all we can.
Right.
To know that messing up is also part of learning. You learn a lot more from the mistakes than you learn from the success, as people say. And this is, when I heard that the first time, I thought, yeah, that's a rationalization. That's a way to say, I didn't get it, so I'm learning. But it is worth the experience. It is worth the experience, but only if you are self-aware and you admit that the mistake is not necessarily all up to you or all down to you. It's not all down to you. It's not all your fault. There are other factors involved, but there are some factors that are in your control, and you should learn to control those factors.
Okay, so coming back to the topic of freedom that you were talking about, like, you spoke about freedom a lot in a lot of places, and I believe that is a philosophy that you live by, that you want to be free and you don't want to be restricted by someone else's ideology and principles. What other principles do you live your life by other than being free?
I don't know. Whenever one tries to elucidate any of the principles one lives by, one ends up sounding probably futile. Because, like, for instance, I would love to say that honesty is one of the principles that I live my life by. But if I were to do an audit every day, I would probably find that I've told any number of lies. Are these white lies of St. Augustine, which is lies that you tell to somebody who, a friend who comes into the room and says, "You like my clothes today?" And you say, "You're wonderful," when you think they're hopeful. Is that a lie that is told with benevolent intentions? Is it still a lie? Is honesty therefore subverted? Is honesty therefore possible? Is honesty even therefore valuable? All these are questions that one needs to ask. So I think, this very strange thing. When I was in college, I think it must have been in junior college, there was a section from Hamlet, and it is the lines of Polonius to Laertes, and it ends with "To thine own self be true, and it follows as the night the day. Thou canst not be false to any man." And I remember reading those lines and thinking, my God, everything he said, everything that you need to say here. It is so beautiful. And the teacher who was teaching it said, "What this is a collection of creations. It's an entire collection of creations. Shakespeare puts together with great elegance all the common cliches of a father's wisdom to his son, and he mocks them. It would, whoa, these are such sensible things to say to a child. Okay, like don't get into fights easily. But if you get into a fight, then make sure you stay and you don't you really count. Uh, Keep your friends. Hold on to good friends. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. All of it sounded like good advice to me. I watched several versions of Hamlet, and in each version of Hamlet, Polonius is presented as a buffoon, and this speech, as he's giving this speech, which was so important to me, he is being ignored by her, who is playing with his dog in one version, or who's just yawning in another version. And I realized that this is a common belief that these lines of Polonius are stupid cliches. And I don't think so. I actually think to thine own self be true. If you could hang on to that, if you could try, like if you spend your life trying to find out who you are, okay, that's all your job. I tell my students at the Sophia Polytechnic in the social communications media where I've taught for 30 years, I tell them this year is not about learning how to use a camera or how to write a broadcast or how to do journalism or how to make a film, though we do all that as well. It is about learning who you are. This is special time because, college, 5 years is cut out of your life and you're given those 5 years. And the pretense is that you're supposed to get a BCom at the end of it, or a BA or BSc, or whatever you want. It's not true. You're just there to find out who you are. Okay? Now, the difficult thing is that the self is a moving target. It is in constant change. So even when you recognize something about yourself and you say this thing about yourself, what you are saying is this recognition is going to change that self and its behavior. And so tomorrow when I get up, if that recognition has really registered, that self has changed.
Right.
So as you can see, college is obviously the time when you get some time to think about it if you're using college well. But your life is really spent dedicated to finding who you are and then being true to that self.
I I had a question on this. Like when we say that we need to understand ourselves and then be true to that self. But I also feel that as a human, you're constantly evolving, and at multiple phases of your life, maybe you need you have different purposes, or you want to achieve a certain different set of goals. Then to thine own self be true is not just that one moment that you have gained this enlightenment or you're self-aware now, but rather it's probably like a constant process that you need to walk parallelly alongside the whole self-awareness journey.
It's like looking in a mirror and looking outside
Yeah.
the world as well, because you have to do both of them constantly. And the mirror also reflects the world and changes the image that you're seeing in the world. So, yeah, it's a good call, but what fun. That's why we have consciousness. Consciousness is both a blessing and a curse. Like I don't think snakes spend a lot of time wondering about what snakehood really is. But as we spend a lot of time wondering who we are and what we're doing here and whether we're doing good or we're doing bad or we're doing evil or we're doing something worthwhile or this is really what I'm supposed to be doing. But not doing it, not doing that is even worse. I mean, doing it is exhausting, but not doing this, the consequences are worse.
You talk a lot about productivity, and productivity requires a lot of discipline to get into. Uh, how do you maintain that discipline with the kind of life that you live?
See, I think at the age of 40, I gave up working entirely. So I always laugh and say I retired at the age of 40. But I didn't retire. Actually, I gave up working in formal setups, which means I gave up having a job, a daily job to go to at the age of 40. And I did that because I wanted to write my novel. And I thought it was time. I thought, already I don't qualify for young novelists as a tag anymore. And this is getting ridiculous. I can't be serving two masters. I can't because when I was employed, I did try to give value for money. I was a very conscientious employee. So at 40, I decided that I'm going to quit and I'm not going to work anymore. Now, on the way home in that flight from the Jaipur airport, I talked about it often, so I won't talk about it again. I remember saying to myself, well, I don't know how I'm going to live. I don't know. As, when you have a salary, whatever salary it is, and it wasn't like I was earning terribly much, but I was earning a decent amount. You get used to certain things. You get used to taxis. You get used to buying tickets. You get used to buying books. You get used to buying movies. You get used to do these things without thinking about them because there is no question of a budget. There's going to be a restoration of the finances happening in the next month. So what's the point? Now, when you're on your own, you're earning for yourself, you don't have rolling. Okay? And you not having rolling means you really have to budget. I remember spending that time in the plane, trying to figure out exactly where my money went, scrolling through bank accounts and seeing exactly where the money kept going. And I was aghast at how much money the average city goer spends on a lack of punctuality. Right?
Right.
So, so much money goes to taxis, to Olas, to Ubers, to Olas, to Nerus, to whatever service provider you had speaking on the top of you. And the reason you did that is because you weren't ready on time. So you can't take the metro and then take the train and then take the bus or whatever, just get to work at 15 rupees, which you could otherwise so now pay 150. Now, when you look at that carefully, like you look at punctuality carefully, you realize that punctuality doesn't mean getting up on time. That's only part of it. What it also means is going to bed on time. So if you now work backwards towards the night and make sure that you're going to sleep on time so that you get up on time so that you can wait for a bus and get to the place that you're getting to in 10 rupees already. So I figured that a lot of almost everything that goes wrong in one people's life actually comes down to a lack of time management. Well, time management is really central, and no one ever warns you about this. That you have no idea how much time you have.
Right.
You don't know. Okay? So I'm 58, 59, 60, 61, 62. I could live to be 100. I could have 1 day left. It's as simple as that. Nothing is going to buy me anymore. Simple as that, right? And yet, you're scrolling constantly through Instagram. Constantly.
Right.
No idea. Sometimes it's as simple as get yourself a watch. Just buy a watch. Put that 200 rupee watch on your wrist and save invaluable quantities of that. Because money is a renewable resource. Time is not. It's not a renewable resource. And we have no respect for that. We have so little respect for that. Our own time. Okay, we make other people wait. We are late for appointments, which is disrespecting other people's time, yes. But in the process of actually scrolling endlessly through social media for small, significant serotonin hits, right? We're actually dribbling out a good quantity of life, of the time that we have. So, Instagram allows you to put a setting on it that will warn you when half an hour has come or 1 hour has come or whatever time you want to spend on it. Do that. You have to learn to self-limit if you want to be productive. And if you'd like to just, there are days when I'm sure you just want to spend all day long doing nothing but mindless stuff. That's all. But you should know that day spent doing mindless stuff is not coming back. It's gone. So enjoy it. Sure. Worth it? Okay, fine. But that's the pact you made with the world at that point in time. You said, this is what I want to do.
Mhm.
I never get this
Right.
time. This is what I want. That's okay. That's okay. I do try, say, one of the things that I've learned is, say, there are some places where almost inevitably you will be made to wait. Doctors' waiting rooms are good examples, right? A doctor cannot give you a fixed appointment because the person who comes in might have a really serious problem, might need some conversation to happen. That conversation might take a while. There might be some things that have to be checked, etc. You don't know. So you might be given an appointment for 4:30 and we get to 6:30. Please carry a book along and read. Please carry a notebook along and write. Please carry your laptop and work. Don't sit there letting people make you wait. You don't have to ever spend time waiting. You can be gainfully employed while you are waiting. Just make the decision that you're going to be gainfully employed. It's as simple as downloading a book onto your Kindle and reading it when you are waiting. So that at least your brain is employed. So when people say, I'm so sorry I kept you waiting, I say, no one ever keeps me waiting. Only I keep myself waiting by bad plan. Otherwise, I'm fine.
That's the best way to put it. I keep myself waiting by bad planning. I'm going to steal that line and use it somewhere else in a different setting altogether.
Yeah.
This is again slightly off topic, but you mentioned that at the age of 40, no one would consider you a young writer. But I think writers are like PM candidates in India in that regard. Like, if
Because
you're
there are ageist prizes. There are
really
age prizes that say you have to be under the age of 35 to be a young novelist. And then the Sahitya Akademi will give you a Yuva Puraskar. If you are 36, they won't give it to you. Okay? So when you're 40 and writing your first novel, you know mauka haath se guzar gaya hai. It's gone. So that's what I'm saying. Even there's the Granta used to have the best of British young novelists. That was the age 35 or 40 or something like that. But see, these are things that the world uses. You don't have to use them. I don't see myself as my chronological age. I see myself as the age I feel in my body. And if I'm writing from a 16-year-old's point of view, I have to try and live a 16-year-old life, at least inside my head. So the imagination runs untrammeled through chronology. It jumps over decades. It doesn't give a hoot about what the clock is actually saying or the calendar is saying. This is the world that has a problem.
the guy who wrote Cain and Abel. He said that he has a routine set. He wakes up every morning at 5. He put in 1 or 2 hours of work, and then during the course of his entire day, he tried to write at least 6 or 7 hours a day. And creating art, I'm not just talking from the writer's or author's perspective, but creating any form of art requires certain kind of discipline. So I was coming from that perspective. How do you be so disciplined? Because sometimes I'm pretty sure it would have happened with you that sometimes you are like, "Yeah, nahi likhne ka mujhe aaj." So how do you keep yourself up in those days?
Okay, I don't think that there are many days when I want to write, and there are many days when I don't want to write. Okay? The simple thing to do to yourself is to say, this is your job. This is the job you chose for yourself. This is what you want to do. And some days it will not feel as good. And it's okay. What I feel like is okay. But I have to do what I have to do. Right? It's so you say to yourself, "Yeah, I'm not feeling like writing, but I will be writing. I will start writing." I don't, I don't see why what you feel has to determine what you do. Right? Think about it. Think about it as a mother feeding a child. Right? You have to feed your child in some like 4 hourly intervals or something like that. Mothers don't choose like they don't get up and they say, "Oh well, I think I'll just skip this feeding." To a feel like you feed the child because you've got to feed the child. You do your duty. I feel very, very strongly that the duty to the muse, the duty to one's creativity, the duty to one's chosen field of endeavor is as important as that. You will go, you go on. You may not feel like it right now. Too bad. Doesn't matter. Go and do it anyway. It is
Right.
loss, right? In the world, in the world of banks and legal firms and whatnot, there are people who don't feel like doing their work. Yeah, I get it. And that's then someone will come in and say, you don't do your work, you don't feel like doing it, you're fired. You're sacked. You're going to sack yourself, fire yourself. You're going to dismiss yourself from the position of Jerry Pinto right now. And then do what? Get to work. I tell myself when I go to work. And I badly that day. That's all right. That's all right. But you've done your duty. You've done your work. That's simple.
Right. I believe Jerry Seinfeld also said in one of his interviews what you essentially explained. He said that all artistic endeavor is exhausting and painful. So you must find the pain that you are most comfortable with.
Yeah. Have fun with it. And then oftentimes, as artists, we tend also, or as writers of creativity, we tend to a little bit mythologize pain.
Right.
And to talk about pain as something that is inevitable and whatnot, there's a lot of fun involved in creativity. And we must never underestimate that fun. Because otherwise it ends up sounding like, all this junk, macho junk that men talk about, right? What do you have to do? You just have to sit down and typewriter, open up a vein and breathe. Yeah. But you're also having fun. It is a cushy job. It is a job. It is a fun thing. We make universities, right?
Right.
How it doesn't get better than that. You make people happen. And unlike, like, say, for women who can also make people happen, but then have to do 4-hour feedings and provide for the match. This thing, you can put them on the at the end of the day and just go off and do something else.
I have a major issue with Indian translations. In my experience, I have not, except for yours and Daisy Roxwell's, I'm yet to find a good Indian translator. And that has been my experience with that. In one of the podcast episode, I had Smriti on as a guest, and we argued about that particular topic for 15 or 20 minutes. There was this particular book, Grehda, which was translated from Bengali to Hindi, and I'm not fluent in Bengali, so I read it in Hindi, and it put me off reading altogether. Like, I could not finish that book for a better part of 4 or 5 months. And after that, for an entire year, I could not pick another book. And that book, that translation was such a horrible thing that I ever read in my life.
Harshit, I think we all have in our heads ways of judging what we want to read and what we don't want to read. So my thing is, like, often I will pick up a book that has won an international prize. Simply because it has won the international prize. I'm not taking names here. And I will begin to read it, and I think, really? My first instinctive response is, what were the judges thinking? Okay. The second is the writer serious? And then the slightly more reasoning, rational Jerry Pinto steps in and says, Jerry, this is not your book. It is someone else's book. Go find your book. Simple as that. See, the person we are, it is difficult to imagine that there can be any person who would be able to identify what is good writing and what is bad writing, and be able to give you a balance, a kind of a set of rules for it. There is no such thing. Because we all come with our own tastes, with our own with our own interests, with our own histories of reading, with our own expectations of reading. And the book does not have to satisfy all that. Writers do not have to satisfy all that. Writers it's like going to a buffet and choosing to eat a certain dish and then saying, this dish is bad, and watching while hundreds of other people eat the dish and say it's fine. Okay? Happens to us all the time.
Right.
Sometimes you order, right now, Bombay is covered with places selling Chinese bhel. I tried it because I like street food and I'm always interested in what's being sold. And I found it monstrous. I found it really awful. And it has, my opinion, hasn't stopped Chinese bale from being sold everywhere across the city and hasn't stopped lots of people from enjoying it. So all I do when I see a Chinese bale balance, I avert my eyes and walk past speedily and say that's not my dish, but it is someone else's. Enjoy yours. So the same thing, absolutely the same thing with movies, with film, with art. That standard thing that people often say when they go to an art gallery, my grandson could do this. Yeah, but make your grandson do it. Try, see whether you get something
Yeah.
magnificent or something as stupid. It's not your painting. That's all. Move on. It's okay. I'm glad you had a 20-minute discussion with whoever it is. I'm not defending translation. I'm not objecting to your point. You may have just had a run of bad luck in the translation that you've been doing. Or you may be expecting different things out of translation and not finding them. It's just okay. It's fine. I respect your opinion.
Could be my bias at play here. I told you.
Could be 100 different things. It doesn't matter. What I often feel is when you pick up a book, if the book speaks to you, it's like a like walking into speed dating and finding a good friend, right?
Right.
And sometimes you may spend a whole 6 months speed dating and find nothing that matches you or that you want to do. That's also
Yes.
have rereading.
Right.
You can't find a new book to read. You read an old book that you love, and you're back. Okay. But of course, you're a new person, so you may even discover that the book that you loved 16 years ago is no longer a book that you care about now. Or you may find it is a book that surprises you. You think, gosh, oh, is this all in here? I remembered so little of Falsification of Memory. In the millions and millions of books that have come out, the millions of books there are, you found a book that spoke to you so clearly and so with such meaning that you want to read it again and again. Now, that's like a love marriage. That's like finding a partner. That's just
Right.
one. Okay. So just enjoy it. And see, I think what happens now is that when we're young, right? I remember when I was younger, if I found a book that I loved, I wanted everyone I loved to read it, and I wanted them to love it as much as I did. So, like you found, I remember finding this author called Robert Benchley, Peter Benchley's father. I thought he was magnificently fun. I loved my 10 years in a quandary and how they grow. I wanted everybody to read it. So I used to actually lend it to people and then I would hound them. Have you read it? Have you read it? Have you read it? You like it? Don't you like it? Don't you like it? And eventually I found that most people have piles of books that they are already reading. And this is another book that they have added to it, and maybe they get to it and link it. So slowly that zeal begins to fade. And now what I do is when I find a book that I really like, I'll suggest it to people. I'll say, I'm reading Step by Diana Attil, and it is magnificent, you should read it. And they say, yes or no. And some people ring up and say, hey, I bought Step by Diana Attil, and it is great, thank you so much. And other people just don't ever mention it. That's fine. I've done my duty. I've told them, I put up my beacon for that book, and I've moved on. That's okay. I think the joy of reading is that I feel, if it is edged in by, and so if there is a list presented, 10 books you should read, 100 books you should read before you die, I don't bother. Because my joy lies in walking into a bookshop and discovering what I should read. I don't want you to tell me that. And of course, I have often done it myself. I've authored these lists myself, for which I apologize. But there are people who actually live their life by those lists and print them out and tick them off after they've read them and whatnot. That's great. For me, it is walking into a bookshop and discovering that there is someone called Jamaica Kincaid. I hadn't heard of Jamaica Kincaid, and now I've discovered her, and I'm reading her obsessively. That's one. And it's also about sometimes, Annie Ernaux has won the Nobel Prize. I haven't heard of Annie Ernaux, but she's already been translated. Oh, great. I can buy an onion. No, I can something going on here, something interesting. Maybe another one, or maybe not. I think that for me is the fun of reading, and I don't want to put up barriers about the should barrier for other people, right? Thing that makes the classics so painful to read is the should barrier. You
Mm,
should have read Shakespeare.
right.
You should have read Tagore. You should have read Kalidas and people. If you're a reader, you want to read what you want to read. You don't want to read what you should read. How does that work? No?
That's very
You
true.
should just go to bookshops, open books, smell them, read a paragraph, read two paragraphs. Don't like it, put it down, pick up another one. There are thousands that, how wonderful is that? Better still, join a library. You can then take a risk on a book. You can say, I don't know about this, but you're not paying for it. Take it home, read it, return it to the library. Don't return it, love it, go buy it for yourself. How what libraries are for? Why aren't we using libraries? Why are libraries dying? Why are libraries being used as as reading rooms for people, for young children who are doing the competitive exams? Why aren't people in the stands? Why are university students not reading around their syllabi? How can you be a literature student and only read your syllabus books? Stupid is that? Didn't you come to literature because you love the idea of reading? I study. I mean, does it get better than that to do a literature degree when all you have to do is read books? And they don't want to, they want notes.
On the topic of translation, I believe I mentioned it to you over chat as well that I did not enjoy, and I'm in minority when I say this, that I did not enjoy Cobalt Blue, which you translated. I like the writing, but the story and the characters did not gel with me.
Fine, you didn't like it, it's okay. There is no requirement for anybody to like everything that anyone else has done, right? So, I mean, I would like it if you had read it and liked it, but if you didn't like it, or it was not the book for you, it's possible. It's entirely possible. It's not an issue. There are many things like, I mean, many books that I do. Okay, so this year I've read about 120 books, right? Out of it, maybe I've kept 10 for the future when I will reread them. And 110 have left the house. They've gone. They've gone to other places, other people, friends, libraries. They've gone. They've moved out. It does this is not a judgment on those books. It's a judgment call I make about whether I will read the book or not. Right? So today, for instance, I was reading a book on fractals. Uh, it's an interesting book. I don't know that I'll ever read it again. So it will go to a friend who might be interested in fractals. End of story. So there are books that will come into one's life and pass on. There are books that are not ones. It's just like people. Books are just like people. We will not be friends with all the friends of our friends. So you sometimes have a friend, that friend is married to someone you can't stand. Happens.
What do you do when you are facing writers? Do you take a pause and do something else? What is it that you do?
It is a writer's block, Monica. I really don't be writer's block any more than I would be cook's block. Say, for instance, if your cook came into you and said, "Aaj प्याज हमसे बात नहीं करता है और मटर और पनीर से वाइब नहीं आ रहा है, तो मैं cook नहीं कर सकती आज. I'm not cooking today." What would you say? You say, "Get into the kitchen and cook. I want something to eat. I don't care what it is like. You just cook it and get it." Now, if your job is as important as a cook's job, don't do it as a writer. You are there to do the writing. That cook is there to do her cooking or his cooking. Get on with your work. You can make a bad dish today. You don't have to be great every day, but you do your work every day. Once you get into the habit of every day, once every day becomes your talisman, okay, I will do the writing. I will finish it. I will not ask myself, do I want to write or do I not want to write? I will write. Okay. You will find yourself right. And writing is the cure for not writing. So you push your way through the bad writing. You do the bad writing when you're not feeling inspired, you're feeling tired, you're feeling bored of your own work, you're bored of all your characters, you're bored of the work that you're making. You're just like completely without inspiration. You just write on. And the process of making those words is like an icebreaker pushing through an ice flow. It will eventually, you will come out into clear water. You will come out into that fresh water. You will be writing well again, but you will be writing well again if you have done your bad writing and got it behind you, got it out of your system. Finish it. Finish it. So I say when people don't feel like writing, it's a good time to write. Just write. Don't ask yourself, is this good or is this bad? Put down the words. Set yourself a target for that day. Not going to stop till 2,000 words are over. 2,000 words are over, now I can do what I want. But do your writing. There's a lot of self-indulgence, which I think masquerades as these, as creativity and how creative I am and whatnot. We are all creative. Okay? Everybody is creating. Why is it that only writers have a blog? How come we never talk? I mean, cooking is a very creative thing. How come there's no bake stuff? I don't feel like baking this afternoon. No, don't let yourself give into this mythology of romantic creativity. Tell yourself, I have a job here to do. I want to do this job. I want to do it well. And remember this, you believe in things like Malcolm Gladwell's outliers. The magic mantra is 10,000 hours. Those hours contribute, those hours of bad writing contribute to your 10,000 hours. You're on your way to becoming a maestro. Don't give up that possibility. Do your writing right now, even this time. It counts towards your hours.
Yeah, expanding on that theme of self-indulgence that you just spoke about, there's a certain amount of burden and I feel it's totally unnecessary sometimes, but there's a certain amount of burden that's been put upon artists. Burden in the sense that your art should not exist in vacuum. The argument that's been thrown about this, I see it more recently, but the argument that's been thrown about that how art should be a medium for social change, or it should be used as a commentary on society. And I recall this beautiful movie Party by Govind Nihalani, I believe, and that talks about something similar, wherein all the people from the art circle have gathered and they are talking about how banal it all is, and they don't care. Like, the whole idea of that movie is that people actually don't care about what is happening in the society. They just love to talk about that, and they don't want to talk about that particular issue. Do you still believe that the art should be this way? Like, art should be used as a medium for social change, or do artists have any right to do so?
Come on, I've always my trump card is freedom, right? So I'm always going to give everybody the right. What I claim for myself, if I claim freedom for myself, I need to claim it for you as well, right? So if a writer goes out and says, I'm going to make art that creates social change, I say, good for you, brother, I'm with you. And if an artist goes out and says, my art will simply exist on its own terms and it will do nothing else, I'll be with that person saying, hey, sister, I'm with you, go do your thing, right? If I claim freedom for myself, I would not be prescriptive for somebody else. But I do believe that all well-made art has a beneficial effect on human beings. Good music, like for instance, a great A.R. Rahman tune may have nothing to do with national integration. But when the first time I heard A.R. Rahman's music, I was in a truck in the Punjab, and a Punjabi truck driver was playing Roja in Tamil and banging down to the beat. And I thought, this is how we will eventually get to be a nation on the back of popular culture. And I just thought, whoever this guy is, I didn't know who his name was. He's just made phenomenal music. This phenomenal music is speaking to this Punjabi truck driver and to this Catholic boy sitting next to him. They're both enjoying this music, and it's coming from A.R. Rahman in Chennai. Wow! So I'm saying now, of course, then there is Ma Tujhe Sada, right? Which is directly and attempts to be socially responsible. Is this as great music? If it talks to your heart, it is. If it doesn't talk to your heart, it is not. It is simple as that. So I think good art, when it is made, however it is made, with whatever intention it is made, speaks to people. I did not write them in the Big Hoom as a mental health track. I wrote it as a novel, right? I mean, a sort of way of talking about mental health. Do I have a problem with that? No, I can't have a problem with that. Once I have liberated my novel, I've set it on the waters, the reader starts using it. They choose how they will use that novel. What it will catalyze in them is not under my control. And free. And the reader is free. That's what I keep. My trump card is freedom. So if you set out tomorrow to write a novel, like I think, for instance, Tagore, when he wrote Char Adhyay or he wrote Gora, was writing novels which were intent on social change, right? They were saying something very important, and they're good novels, right? And they can be equally good novels which are written, which have stood the test of time, which have nothing to do with social change, but still give you a sense of what it means to be human. And as long as we understand what it means to be human, we deepen that knowledge and deepen that connect with other people and with other selves that are not us, the world gets better. It's simple like that. But you have to make a good art first. The intention isn't important. Not for me.
No, but aren't you worried about political correctness in that regard? Like, there's a uh, pe- most people, seeing someone completely free and doing and creating whatever they want to do can be very uh, can be a fearful thing. Like, people get easily afraid of those kind of people. So, and aren't you afraid of political correctness, that okay, you have put up something, some people might not agree with that, or some people can be very harsh, not on your art but on you as well.
I think, the right now, because of social media, the ubiquitousness of social media and the decentralization of power, right? There is a time when everybody is a lot more careful. And okay, I just want to say for political correctness that it started as kindness, really as kindness. Okay? So when I was a schoolboy, calling someone langadia because they were lame was ordinary.
Huh.
No one
Right.
saw it as a problem. Not even the parents. Like when a parent came once to the school, and I was manning the gate because we have this odd system where one of the students would man the gate, and she came in and she said, "मुझे शब्बीर से मिलना है." And so it's Shabbir कौन? She said, "वो जो लंगड़ा है ना यार, 800 लंगड़ा है." She said, and I said, "Okay, 1 minute." And I went and I got Shabbir, right? Today, I think if I wrote,
You cannot say such a thing. Yeah.
there might be like people saying, "Oh, how can you say that?" But that's how we spoke. Okay, that's one thing. Now, I don't know that Shabir liked being called Magna. To be reduced to one disability in one part of your body as your entire pehchan may be hurtful. And so, therefore, we asked each other as as civilized human beings, we said we will not use that. We will not say uh, moron. We will not say retard. We will say neurodivergent. So therefore, political correctness began in kindness. Okay, it got politicized and it got turned into kind of moral high ground, and everyone had to be scrambling onto that moral high ground and staying there. And then all kinds of other things got attached to it. But I feel constantly we need to be reminded that political correctness starts in kindness. And when your child is neurodivergent, you want people to be saying neurodivergent. You don't want to be saying वो जो डिमेंट है ना तीसरे माले पे वो जो बच्चा है जो पागल है. You don't want people talking like that. So let's all, when we are using language which is a potent and violent and cool, potent in its ability to correct things, and potent in its ability to damage and hurt. Right? Let's just show we are careful and sensitive. That's your responsibility as a writer. Am I careful and am I sensitive? If I feel I have done that to the best of my abilities and you are still hurt, okay, I can only apologize to you. But I will try not to hurt you unless I think, no, I will try not to hurt you. Simple. As simple as that. That's my responsibility because I'm handling a loaded weapon.
Jerry sir, you've spoken so much about writing, and that really inspired me to think of it in a different way. Like, I never considered thinking of writing as a job. Like you said, you won't say that I don't want to do my job today. I think that was very insightful and a nice, I mean, a very interesting way to put it, and probably would help writers, think of it as a job and not give up on writing so easily. So, but in general, like if you want to, I think this is very cliched, but if you would like to give a piece of advice to an aspiring writer, what would you tell them? Like, I just wanted to.
Before you answer that, I should put a disclaimer that Monica is an aspiring writer.
That's right. I would say an aspiring writer needs to be an aspiring reader as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I always tell my students at the Sophia Polytechnic Social Communications Media Department, I say that when we are talking, when we are writing, we are harvesting our feelings, the fields of our minds. But when we are reading, we are fertilizing those fields. We are adding ideas. When I talk to young students, I talk about reading as sowing seeds. I say that when you're reading, you are sowing seeds in your mind. Now, these are seeds that take a long time to grow. But when you are grown up, you will have a forest of ideas inside your head. And you will be able to walk through that forest of ideas at leisure. And there will be low-hanging fruit, which will be your ideas that have started in another thought, in another moment, in another book, in another word. They will be your ideas because they've been nurtured in the individuality of you. So to be a good writer, you must be a good reader. You must read lots and you must read up. Okay. I have cousins and friends who started reading well and started reading Alistair MacLean and read Jack Higgins and Nick Carter and are still reading at that level. So if you want to be a writer, you need to be challenging yourself. You need to be pushing yourself to read something a little more than you can handle. A very good test of whether you're reading a book that is good for you is if you have to reread a passage. You're thinking like, oh, sorry, what I thought I knew what was going on. I have to go back and read a couple of pages. Good. Now you've got something to chew on. Now your brain is actually actively engaged. When you're reading cut, and pages are turning, it's because that has been simplified and easy. No problem.
Yeah.
But when you have to when you're wrestling with the book, that's when you know what you're doing is right for you. It's building your muscle, your intellectual muscle and stamina. Your core is being built. Okay. So be a good reader.
Yeah. On that note, Jerry sir, Monica, we should wind up. Thank you for being here.